Howdy, you guys. Barbarian has come out on streaming this week, so in honor of that, I want to talk a little bit about this film. A lot of people have been saying that it's the horror movie of the year or their favorite horror movie of all time, which is great for them. But I want to talk to you guys about three reasons that I actually think Barbarian is pretty overhyped. So let's dig into it. Barbarian is a 2022 film, just came out a few weeks ago by Zach Krieger. Zach Krieger is best known for Whitest Kids You Know.
And what do you got there?
This is a gallon of PCP.
Wow!
I'm not usually surprised when I see people who are in comedy make the transition over to horror, right? Because comedy and horror are kind of two sides of the same coin when you're talking about writing. Like the way that you construct a joke is very similar to the way that you construct a scare. As much as I love horror, I actually think comedy is the more difficult lift when it comes to writing and making something funny versus making something scary. I could also have that opinion because I'm not great at comedy and I have experience writing and, making horror films. Whether I'm good at horror, I guess you can watch my other stuff and find out. If you have not seen the film, stop right here. Do not watch the rest of this video. Go watch the film first. Don't even watch the trailer. The trailer gives away too much. I'm going to cover a little bit more of that later on, but stop, go watch the film. So I'm not really going to go through a play-by-play of the whole plot, so I'm going to do this as though you have already seen the film. So hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. I was so excited, you guys, going into this film. Like, I love going to see horror movies in the theaters. I've been trying to make more of an effort to see the horror movies specifically in theaters because I just feel like there is this community experience that you have with horror that you don't necessarily have with other types of film when you see them in a movie theater. Definitely overhyped the movie for myself. Didn't like it as much as I really wanted to. You loved it and thought it was the best movie of the year. Man, more power to you. I wish that I felt that way because I desperately wanted to love this movie and I only liked this movie. So the story follows Tess, who shows up to Detroit for a job interview in the middle of the night and it's pouring down rain. She goes to her Airbnb and it is already occupied by someone else. This someone else is Keith. So he opens the door, he invites her in, and kind of against her best judgment, probably, she goes inside. She's very leery of Keith, which is understandable, and I really appreciated how much they pushed her discomfort in this moment. It really, really highlighted how women really do have to be very cautious around men pretty much all the time. Like everything that she did, I was sitting there going, yes, yes, yes. She didn't drink the tea that he gave her. She took a photo of his driver's license. It took a lot of convincing before she was even willing to stay the night. Um, Personally, if I were in that situation, I would probably get in my car and drive to a safer part of town and just sleep in my car. But I also understand that, like, the movie kind of needs to happen. So I was willing to, they gave me enough to make me feel like, okay, I can see why she would make this choice. There's even a very awkward, if you're like me and you can't deal with awkwardness in media, it's full on cringe.
But I thought that, you might want some of this. But if I open it while you weren't here, I'm sorry, I'm rambling. Jesus Christ.
They end up kind of bonding though, because they find out that they have some similar interests, and so that kind of puts her at ease, right? And throughout this, you can tell that the movie is trying to build on this idea that something bad is going to happen to Tess, and it's probably going to be Keith who does it to her. In the trailer of the film, it makes it look like she goes to bed that night and then all of the crazy things happen. And I really wish that was actually the case, because what actually happens is we get to see Tess get up and go to a job interview. And that kind of is where my complaints about the movie start. I understand that a trailer is, 2.5, 3 minutes of a feature length movie. So, of course, they're going to cut things out. Of course, they're going to make time, compress time. I feel like there are a lot of scenes that are just unnecessary to the film and slow down the pacing of the story and slow down the overall vibe of the film. And this interview scene is one of them. So overall, there were like three, 3.5 things that I really found to be heavy criticisms of the film. And the first one was the pacing. So The film jumps around a lot. We're with Tess and Keith, and we have this buildup of, is Keith the bad guy? Is Keith the bad guy? Keith is violently killed by the actual bad guy, by the monster in the film, by the woman. And then we immediately cut to AJ. And for me, that was like, so we cut to a completely different character. The dread and the tension is just completely smashed and abolished because now we're in a convertible with this guy singing and driving down near a beach, right? It's very idyllic. And so like the pacing of this film just really messed with me. And on the one hand, I can see the argument of like this kept you kind of on your toes. You didn't know what was going to happen next. It didn't lend itself to the same formula as you usually see in horror films. And that's like a legit opinion to have, right? Like I can understand that. So I don't typically have a problem when a film's timeline is put together in an interesting way, right? Like I think this movie did a good job in doing something different when it came to the way that they structured the narrative in this film. I will always be cool with a movie trying something different and trying something new. And you can get away with moving away from that and moving back. And in fact, sometimes you should because you can't keep your audience up here on the tension the whole movie. Because eventually they'll just get used to it and it'll bottom out. And you have nowhere else to go to ramp up the tension. So you have to bring them back down at some point. But for me, at least, they didn't just bring me back down, they just brought me completely out of it. Because we are with AJ, the next character, forever until he meets back up with Tess eventually. And it just was too long for me. Like his whole arc just went on too long before we got back to the action and we got back to the scares and the horror. And like, I really do think it's possible to cut away from the main action in a way that works and that doesn't just bottom me out when it comes to like my level of investment and my level of dread. Because there was another movie that I really loved that did that recently, and that movie was Nope. Nope. Spoiler for Nope. Very small one, but spoiler for Nope if you haven't seen it yet. That movie also cuts away during a lot of the action in the film to the television set with Gordy. Um, but I think that the reason that for me that worked and this doesn't is because the Gordy scenes were always very short, and on top of that, they were very tense. So, okay, you are taking me out of the tension of the main storyline, but you're putting me in a place that has equal, if not more, tension in it. And so I'm okay with that. I don't feel like that is an interruption of the pacing of the film like I do with the way that this film was put together narratively. Eventually, AJ makes it down into the basement as well. He runs from the woman, he falls into a hole, the grate gets put over the top, and then from the darkness, Tess pops out. And I'm like, thank God we're back with Tess. I'm here for it. Let's go. Let's do this. Stop it. Stop playing with my heart. Huh. So we cut to a flashback of the 1970s. And I don't hate this scene. I think that this sequence should have been in the movie. Like, I don't think it should have been left out of the film, but I don't think it should have been where it was because this is now the second time that you've got me like, I'm here, let's do it. I'm here for the action and for the dread and for the scares. And then you basically blue ball me. And that it frustrates me. And it just like, I just want to get back to the action. I just want to get back to Tess and what's happening here. The character that we're made to follow when we do that massive break, when we jump from Keith and Tess to AJ, is just so hateable. I hate that guy, and I'm meant to, right? You are meant to hate him. They do so much in their power to make him both a real person. Like, I know AJ. Like, Justin Long did a great job with that character. Like, I know that guy. I've met that guy more than once in my life, right? And I am sure that there's a lot of you out there who have also met that guy. But they made him so hateable too. Like, from his initial thing where we meet him, where he is accused of a sexual assault, and then his subsequent reaction to that, to when he goes he finally goes to the house and he's rifling through their luggage. He takes Tessa's laptop out and the road just tosses it across the room when he's done with it. Like, MacBook's expensive, yo. Like, what the hell are you doing? But it's really, like, nailing home that he doesn't give a crap about anyone. And then, of course, dropping the F-bomb when he goes to the bar, and then the initial or the, eventual admission that he did coerce that woman into having sex with him, and therefore he did sexually assault her. So, we aren't supposed to like AJ. So, creating a hateable character is like it's a tactic, it's a thing to do, it's fine. But what you end up doing when you make a character very, very hateable is that you kind of destroy your ability to create dread surrounding their safety. Because a lot of creating dread in a horror movie is based on empathy for the character. So if I don't care if the character's gonna die, like if I don't care about them and I don't care about their physical safety, then it's a lot harder to get me tense in a scene, in a suspenseful scene because I don't care. And so while like some of the scenes with AJ were funny, like the whole tape measuring scene where he's in this like torture basement and there's cages that are human size and he's just in there like tape measure how much, square footage can I add to my freaking Zillow listing? Like it's a funny scene and it's well done, but, like, I can't like, the dread's just not there when they switch back to the horror, right? And the next few minutes of the movie are AJ escaping from the woman and finding what's worse down in there. But the issue that I had with this is that I hate AJ. Like, this guy is reprehensible. I am watching now, waiting to see how gloriously this man dies. Um, I just can't stand him. So when he's like scrambling through the dark and, there is a very cool shot where she's like just on the edge of his flashlight and then kind of fades into the darkness. That's a really cool visual, but I'm not scared for him because I hate him. So he finds a room and he goes in there and he finds Frank. He doesn't know that Frank is a serial killer, right? He finds the tapes. I did think the tapes were a very cool like storytelling moment, visual storytelling with all the names. It's like it was some like normal women's names, but the fact that some of them were like cab driver and Asian biter and the one who cried. I thought that was a really cool thing. I found myself like quickly trying to scan them all. And when it comes out on streaming, I will probably go in, pause it, and read all of them because that was a very good touch. Of course, he thinks the serial killer is horrible. It doesn't surprise me that as shitty of a human being as AJ is, that he wouldn't be finally horrified by something, and when he finally sees it on the tape, and thankfully they don't show us, which is great. I don't need to see that. I've seen enough violence against women in films. I don't need to see any more for probably the foreseeable future. But we see his reaction to it. And so I buy that. He sees that. He's finally feeling something. He's, terrified and he's like, "You're a monster." Okay, great. I still hate him. Like, just because you think a serial killer is horrible doesn't mean that you yourself are not also a, like, awful person for different reasons. So the third thing that I had issue with was like the reveal of what was going on in the basement. You could argue that the twist of the movie, not every movie has to have a twist, right? But if this movie had one, the twist would be that Keith wasn't the bad guy. And I'm going to get to that in a minute. But the reveal of what was actually going on in the basement to me is also a big part of that film. It's a big part of the storytelling. And it's like, what's down here? Like when I saw this movie, I was like, they're gonna run into some horrors. What's going on? Oh my gosh, what's happening? When they finally revealed to me what was going on in the basement, I was pretty underwhelmed. Like I feel like I have seen the story, and maybe this is just because I, like every white woman my age, reads and listens and watches way too much true crime, but I just feel like I have seen that story so many times. There's a serial killer, he's targeting women, he is dragging them and holding them in his basement to do horrible things to them. Like, the fact that they went with that was kind of surprising, but not in, like, the good way, like, "Oh, I'm on the edge of my seat," but more like I was surprised that they went with something so predictable. Like, I was surprised that they went with, like, this kind of stock thing, and it's horrible. It is horrible that I put it in that category, right? Like, that thing has become so normal. Like, that is just horrifying. But that is the case, right? So I was a little bit disappointed that that ended up being the thing that was going on in the basement. Um, Now when we talk about the twist, we get to the point 5, like, when I said that there's 3.5 things that I'm upset about with this movie, the last thing that bothered me on this film was not actually the film itself, and it's not actually the film's fault in any shape or form. It was the trailer. So I don't know if you guys know a lot about, like, the process for how a trailer for a movie gets made, but typically speaking on a studio film, the director does not have any say on what the trailer looks like. The marketing is done by the studio, and they just make what they think is going to sell the film, which is understandable, but that's why a lot of times you get these trailers that give away too much of the movie, which is why at the beginning of this video I told you don't even watch the trailer, because in my opinion it gives away too much. When I saw that trailer, my initial thought, I had two initial thoughts. One, holy crap, I want to see that film, that looks amazing. And two is, it's a shame that they told me that Keith wasn't the bad guy. And I get that not everyone came away from the trailer with that thought, right? Like, I've seen some other reviews of people who didn't have that spoiled for them in the trailer, and I'm very jealous. A couple of the people who I went to see the film with also had not seen the trailer. So when we were talking about the movie afterwards, they had a lot more glowing praise for it because they really enjoyed how they really set up Keith to be the bad guy and then did the twist where it wasn't Keith. Keith was also a victim. And I was so sad that I didn't have that same experience. I feel like I would have enjoyed this movie more had I had the experience of not knowing whether or not Keith was the bad guy. Because the relationship they developed between Tess and Keith, as short lived as it was done very, very well. And I really appreciated it. It's just like a general complaint for me for modern trailers and films. Like, I just wish they wouldn't give away so much. So, that's, again, that's not the movie's fault. That's just how they chose to market it. It's just a bummer for me personally. Other thing that I did think the movie did really well was showing how women have to be afraid of men, right? Like, the whole first part of the movie with Tess and Keith really hammers that home, like I already talked about. But then we also have the scene with Frank, when he goes into this woman's house, he puts on a worker uniform and he goes into her house and she just lets him in because he looks official, right? And, like, if that were me in, the year of our Lord 2022, I know I can't let a man in my house when I'm home alone. Like, I won't do it. If I have a salesperson come by or anyone with utilities or anything, I won't let them in, right? Like, if I have scheduled an appointment with someone, like if I'm like, "Hey, AT&T, my internet is screwed up," like, send someone. That's one thing, but even then I try to schedule those when I know I'm not gonna be home alone, because I'm just not comfortable with, like, being in a house alone with a man that I don't know. It's just too much of a risk, and it's not worth it. And I appreciate that they showed that in the film as well. Like, that was a really great, like, I don't know, it was really well done. And I know that there's not a writing credit given to a woman on this film, but it did, like, those moments resonated with me as a woman enough that I am positive that Zach Krieger, like, did his freaking research, right? Like, it's not to say that, you have to be a woman and have to have had these experiences in order to be able to write. Obviously, that's not true. I just really appreciate that I saw those moments and I immediately clicked with them on so many levels, from Tess not drinking the tea to the fear of this, guy in a coveralls coming into my house. Like, it was well done and I really appreciated that. And I don't feel like I've seen a lot of horror films that really get that level of caution right. And this one did, and I thought that was great. Overall, I thought the film worked really well. Like, it's a good movie. You should definitely go see it. It's shot really well. They did a lot of really cool cinematography. The sound design and the score is lovely and very well done. Um, there are some good scares and spooks in the movie. There's some great kills in the movie if you're into that, especially if you like kind of some body horror stuff. Not intense body horror, just moments of it, right? And so overall, like, I would say, it's worth seeing. I just wish that I liked it more than I ended up liking it. Okay, guys, so that is all that I have for Barbarian. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments about the points that I made, please feel free to put them in the comments below. I would love to hear from you guys and what you thought of the film. If you agree and you thought, maybe it could have been better, or if you disagree and you really thought it was just off the charts amazing, let me know. I would love to hear those takes too. So thanks a lot, and I will see you guys next time.